Hello, everyone. I am Joanna Smith Ramani with the Financial Security Program, and I am beyond thrilled. I'm delighted. I cannot wait to be in discussion today with Lynn Heller, who is the founder and CEO of the Climate Access Fund up in Baltimore. Our discussion with Lynn today is part of a series that we are doing with climate leaders to really start to unearth these intersections and connections between financial security and our changing world. So thank you, Lynn, for being part of this series. And, I say kind of emerging discussion, but of course it's like we're emerging in discussion, but it's here, the intersection of these things, the circular impact of these things. And just welcome to the discussion. And thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk.
Lynn, let's start with where are you coming at this from? Your career is not, you are not a financial security person, right? You're not one of us. You are you, but who is you? How do you approach this, and how do you find yourself in these conversations around climate and financial security and wealth?
So, it's interesting. I feel very lucky to have found this intersection because it really combines two different sort of trends and themes in my career.
Yeah.
Actually, I should say three. One is climate change, a focus on climate change. A second is startup nonprofits. And a third is social justice. And I've kind of done very different things in different ways over the years, but this really is sort of at the intersection of all three.
And how is it showing up for you then? Like, where have you, and that makes total sense then, how you would
Yeah.
find yourself in the mix. And what
Yeah.
does that mean in your work?
Yeah. So about 5 years ago, I started the Climate Access Fund really specifically to look at this intersection between climate change and whether you call it financial security or economic justice or environmental justice or whatever you call it. The Climate Access Fund's mission really is to figure out how to make sure that at this time of transition to a new economy, the clean energy economy, that we're intentional about making sure it's inclusive and making sure that it's not just Wall Street investors that benefit from clean energy production, or that it's just high income households that benefit from discounted clean electricity. And so I started the Climate Access Fund as a green bank, a nonprofit green bank.
Okay.
Green banks are financing institutions that essentially plug gaps in the market that are preventing us from accelerating our transition to climate protection, essentially. But the Climate Access Fund is a unique green bank in that we are focused on one segment of one market, and that is lower income household access to solar power. And even more specifically, access to community solar power. And community solar, about 23 states in the country have community solar laws on their books, which basically says that any resident of that state can sign up to access solar power, typically at a discount, when they can't put solar on their own roofs, or even if they can put solar on their own roofs, they can access solar that is generated somewhere else.
Wow.
In Maryland, as long as it's within the same utility service territory. So I live in Baltimore. We have Baltimore Gas and Electric. I can sign up, and actually I am signed up in my house for a sort of, you can think of it as buying a little bit of a solar array that's being generated somewhere, not on the roof of my house. This is a tremendous opportunity for lower income households, who many of whom are renters, do not own their own homes, so they don't have rooftops where they can put solar, or it's too shady, or they can't afford the upfront costs, their roof is in disrepair. They can't put solar on their own roof, so it's a tremendous opportunity. But the way traditional solar finance works hasn't allowed for low-income households to participate in the benefits of clean energy. So I started the Climate Access Fund to kind of create innovative financing products to incentivize the private sector to include more low-income households.
I mean, it strikes me when I think about our wealth building model, in terms of where does this solution fit in? We talk about how families need positive cash flow just as a starting point, right? And any financial security pathway. And they need affordable assets to own, including shared ownership opportunities, dividend opportunities, just other ways that you have sort of non-labor income flowing in. And this seems to me that it hits kind of multiple parts, in addition to, by the way, helping deal with climate change, but multiple parts of like financial security needs. And I wonder, do you see it that way, or is that how it's being felt in the communities in Baltimore?
That I definitely see it that way. That is the intent is, a lot of the way. So I focus on community solar. There are really sort of four different types of solar generation: large utility scale on acres upon acres of land, rooftop solar where the power benefits that building,
Okay.
single family residential solar, and then there's community solar. And
Okay.
most community solar in Maryland, and I would argue around the country, but I don't know that for a fact, is built on large 10, 15, 20 acres of land. It is the least expensive to build when you build it on land. The power is generated from the solar array. It's sent into the grid. It's mixed up with all the other electrons.
It's all blended
And then,
together.
yeah. It all kind of goes around, and then people get power in their homes. Community solar participants sign up for a portion of that power. They don't know if they're actually getting solar electricity, but they're paying for it to be generated and sent to the grid. So because it is the most lucrative for-profit solar developers, most projects are built on land and serve non-low income households. So what we do is we really look at, okay, one of the gaps we see three big gaps, and I can talk about the other two gaps, but let's focus on one gap in particular that we see in the market, because it addresses your question and really directly addresses financial security. And that is that we didn't see any developers developing projects in underserved communities, which maximize the economic benefits for those communities and those households. And so we have a demonstration project in East Baltimore. It's on the rooftop of a school. It's a K-8 charter school, essentially. And 100% of the power on that rooftop is going to go to low-income families. It's about 150 low-income families that will sign up for the solar project and get a 25% discount on their community solar bill. That equates in Baltimore to about $200 a year.
Wow. I mean, that's that's significant money. It's substantive.
It's significant money. And
Yeah.
for 150 families over the life of the solar project, it's over $1 million for the community. We have a job training component. We have an education component there. We have energy efficiency services that we're providing. So we're really trying to create a comprehensive approach. And we are really trying to tackle how we can enable the low-income households themselves to share in the ownership of the actual solar asset to build wealth. And that addresses your question.
That's so exciting. Well, just as we wrap up here, what are your sort of words of wisdom for those of us who are, worried about climate, but have this optimism, this sense that not only is there something that we can do about that, but we can do that in ways that, as you're saying, also address economic opportunity, social justice, environmental justice issues. Like, what is your word of wisdom, us? What else are you excited about? Leave us with something hopeful, Lynn.
Well, I think, I would say get involved. And there are many ways to get involved, not the least of which is invest in some of these projects. The Henderson Hopkins project, which is what we call it, part of the financing for that is crowdfunded. So there are a lot of individuals that have invested in this project and get a 5% return on their investment. It's a debt product. So there's that. The great news is that the Biden administration passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes, among many other billions of dollars, $27 billion really focused on low-income access to clean energy in all sorts of different ways. And so that is extremely hopeful. And what we're seeing is, just in the year since it's passed, is that ecosystem of actors from
Yeah.
all different income levels and backgrounds that is growing to meet this challenge is really exciting.
And hopefully that can, for my friends out there, my peers in my field, like let that include us too. Right?
Absolutely, because
Let
it
us be
doesn't
there to
have to,
invest and support.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be either or. You address climate change or you address financial security. We can do both. It's hard. We have to focus on
Yeah.
it. We like your work, right? You just have
Right.
to be intentional about it.
Well, and these are the two most urgent issues facing, our world. You can't even just say like our community, our country, it's all tied together, and we've got to do it together. So thank you, Lynn, so much for sharing. Also congratulations on this amazing project you've going in Baltimore. We can't wait to learn more about it, see it expand around the country, we hope. And for those of you listening, we'll have more in this series coming up. And thank you all for joining us and learning more about the intersection of climate change and financial security.
Thank you so much for having me.